Welcome to another episode of This Movie Needs More Flavor. I'm Adam.
I'm Josh.
In this episode, we cover the 1980 film by Stanley Kubrick, The Shining. This movie is based off the 1977 novel from Stephen King. It stars Jack Nicholson, Shelley Duvall, and Scatman Crothers, and centers on the Torrance family, Jack the father, Wendy the wife, and Danny their young son. Danny has an ability known as the Shining, a form of ESP. Jack is a struggling writer that accepts a job to be caretaker for the Overlook Hotel while it's closed for the winter season. With his family in tow, he begins his job as caretaker. However, isolation and madness take hold of Jack, while his young son Danny begins to realize the haunting secrets hidden within the hotel. So Josh, what are your thoughts?
I absolutely love this film. My favorite thing about it is the opportunity to watch it in the theater when Alamo had a showing, and that was absolutely fantastic. So the fact that I got to see it in the theater is an amazing thing. The main thing I want to talk about is the performances and really, I guess, esoteric choices made by Kubrick that facilitated, if not straight provoked the performances. And you look at all the leads.
Jack Nicholson, Kubrick's first choice for Torrance. Now, Stephen King didn't want Nicholson in the role because the character he wrote progressed into madness. He was a loving father and family man, back on the wagon with a fresh new start. And he felt Nicholson looked too batshit to begin with to pull off the progression. But Kubrick's first choice was Nicholson, and it was that choice, coupled with the choice to play Torrance as a man who feels confined by his family, begrudgingly on the wagon, who, teetering on the edge of sanity, shows up to the Overlook and falls off. And it's that choice to portray him as teetering on the edge that creates a possibility for the performance to be both suspenseful and explosive.
Shelley Duvall. Now, there's controversy surrounding how he treated her, but without getting into that, the point I'm trying to make is a unique choice. The choice to do that, whether right or wrong, provoked a standout performance. And lastly, our child lead, Danny, played by Danny, if I'm correct. Kubrick's choice to not inform the child that he was actually in a horror movie is interesting. I mean, it's standard to not put your child actors in a situation where they know what's going on when it's an adult situation. But to keep him constantly clear of it and then still get the reactions that he did, there's something to be said for that. And that's what makes Kubrick the director that he is. Another thing I'd like to talk about is my absolutely favorite scene, and that is the scene following the spilling of the Advocat, the bathroom scene. The interaction between Grady and Jack Torrance. Everything about that scene I enjoy. From the set, there's just the bold colors of just bold white on bold red, clean lines, and the interaction between the two and the transition. That scene for me marks when Jack goes from questioning to complete. When he comes in there, he's cocky. He comes in there, you killed your wife and children.
I agree. At that point, he is essentially owned by the ghosts, the apparitions of the hotel. Like he works for them, essentially.
And as Grady continues and he informs him, that cockiness turns to confusion. And ultimately, Grady corrects him. And that, for me, marks the transition from Jack being apprehensive about, is this going on in my head? Is this going on in the hotel? To, I'm on board. Let's go with this. And really, the harshness the way Grady lays out the situation for him is cruel, but it's almost parochial. He's telling him what to do because this is the established rules.
Be a good little boy, Jack. Listen to what I have to say and do it.
My next topic is that moment where Shelley Duvall's character is panicking. She's in full scramble mode. And what does she encounter in full scramble mode? But a man in a dog costume blowing another dude. And they stop for a moment, and they stop in the most genuine and concerned, "Ma'am, can we help you?" And it destroys me every time. And as I said, the first time I saw it, totally thrown. When I see it now, totally thrown. The book explains to a degree that that's the owner, and his cruel joke to play on an underling was to parade him around in a costume as a dog. It comes out of nowhere in the film, but it comes out of nowhere in the most pinpoint moment it could have, when she's in full panic mode, and it's the last thing she needs to see, and it's the last thing the audience needs to see, and there it is, right there in front of us. And lastly, I would like to discuss something that took me quite a bit of internet research back in the day, where you actually had to do internet research to figure out, and when I did, I was quite proud of myself. But one of the things I love in the film is Scatman. And Scatman's bachelor pad, and he's just laid out, and he's enjoying himself, and his walls are adorned by women with no clothes and big afros. And one poster in particular caught my eye, and I always see it, and I always notice it, and I always thought about it, and I always wondered, is that something that's an actual print? And through my internet research, I finally discovered that yes, indeed, that is an actual print. It was a poster for sale in the 70s. It was called Supernatural Dream. And the model is, in fact, a famous model. She's Azizi Johara, I believe. And I think she was Playboy Playmate in the, dead mid-70s. But, yeah, I figured it out. I was proud of myself. And that's all I've got to say about that.
Wendy, darling, light of my life, I'm not gonna hurt you. You didn't let me finish. I said, I'm not gonna hurt you. What I like about Kubrick, this movie, but all his movies, is that I don't feel like any shot or bit of information is wasted, even if it feels odd or out of place. I was always curious as to why Kubrick made this movie, because he chooses novels that are very cerebral, and I guess to some extent this is. And I found out that when Kubrick made Barry Lyndon, it was a financial failure. So coming off the heels of that film, he wanted something that was commercially viable. And back in the 70s, when he started making this movie, Stephen King was up and coming, and Kubrick and Warner Brothers believed that they made this, it would be very successful. Now, I personally read the novel a long time ago, and I couldn't tell you too much about it these days. But from what I can remember, there are quite a bit of differences between the novel and the film. A few of them that come to mind. There was no labyrinth. It was like Hedges coming alive. That's the one I do remember. I remember Hedges coming alive. I remember the dynamic between Jack and Wendy being a bit different, but Kubrick wanted to transform the novel, much to Stephen King's chagrin. I believe Stephen King felt the movie was very cold, whereas the novel he wrote ended up being very warm, according to him. The outside of the Overlook Hotel in the film is actually the Timberline Lodge in Mount Hood National Forest in Oregon. And in the film, the original script, the infamous room 237 was actually 217. But the management of the lodge decided that it might creep a lot of people out. So they insisted they change the number of the room. So the The room number is now famously 237. So anyway, in the novel, Jack was portrayed as a very stressed out, to say the least, a very stressed out but good guy who had redeeming qualities. And in the film, you'll find that he's just an asshole from the get-go, and he just gets worse. And I'm not sure about it, but my offhand feeling is he probably took Jack Nicholson on, just my theory, for the same reason he took the movie on. He knew it would be financially viable. Now, I could be wrong, but either way, I like Jack Nicholson, so what the hell. Wendy is also a different character in the novel. She's much more of a fighter. In the film, she's a sobbing mess. Now, who knows how any individual will act in these circumstances, these crazy circumstances. However, her being desperate and out of sorts really worked. It helped with the madness of the situation. She's fulfilling her husband's duties at the hotel, and yet she has to deal with her son, who is getting increasingly freaked out about things going on, and her husband, who is losing his mind. So it didn't bother me too much that she was a nervous wreck. She was the only one holding shit together.
It's that look. The look that's on anybody's face when they realize they're in a situation that is like quickly advancing towards fuck. And there's not a damn thing they can do about it. And I mean, that is her key betrayal, if there's anything.
Now, there's one aspect about this film that I really want to talk about, and it's the cinematography. This movie is cinematically amazing wherever you see it. At the theater, it is fantastic. Like, I didn't think it would actually change anything, but it does. The Steadicam. It had already been in use, but it was still undergoing its evolution. And Stanley Kubrick was aware of this. Before this, it was cranes and dollies, expensive things that looked great, but did not capture the real-to-life movement and interaction between people like we might take for granted these days. And in this film, you can really see the motion, the movement, following Danny on his tricycle, Jack pressing upon Wendy, threatening her. Another thing that strikes me about this film, and I didn't realize until I got older, because I saw this film very young, is that the interior of the hotel should not exist the way it is in the movie. There are hallways that lead to nowhere, doors that would literally lead to you falling out. But it adds something to it, seeing the layout, so vast, yet none of it makes sense, and it feels almost claustrophobic. And I don't believe for one moment that this was an oversight. I think this was purposeful.
The scale of the Overlook is always mentioned. How big it is and how much it takes to take care of it is elaborated on. How the hell are you supposed to make a place that big feel claustrophobic? And it felt it felt tight, it felt confining because of the fact that, yeah, if you looked at it, the makeup of it would make no real sense.
I'm going out on a limb here, but you can almost say that there are certain aspects of the movie that, okay, maybe the ghosts don't exist. All right, so up until a certain point, Jack's just going crazy, Danny's upset, and Wendy is just trying to deal with it all. Now, if you're familiar with the novel, yeah, the ghosts are real. So you know that from the get-go, and the movie never tries to dissuade you from that. But I like how things are very psychological for a while, until all hell breaks loose and you realize the ghosts are out, they're partying, and that's it. There are a lot of things that this movie wraps itself in: the cinematography, the claustrophobia, the mystery, the acting, as you touched on earlier. It's a slow burn, but it's a good burn. This movie is also incredibly open to interpretation if you were to dig, whether it be themes of past atrocities, domestic violence, sexual abuse, various different things, or just the notion that maybe none of the events in the movie are actually happening at present at all. Tremendous movie. Special thanks to Finval for the song Abandoned Factory, courtesy of Toontank.com. Our podcast is currently available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Spreaker, and iHeartRadio. Follow us on Instagram. This movie needs more flavor. Our information is in the bio. Well, that's our take for The Shining. We hope to have you back for another installment of This Movie Needs More Flavor. Until then, Take care.